At 21:47 hours, motion sensors detected movement near the northeastern perimeter, where the ammunition bunkers were located. Standard protocol called for perimeter teams to investigate while maintaining defensive positions. But the responding MPs found no immediate evidence of infiltration. Nayeli realized the insurgents were using diversionary tactics to draw security away from their actual target. But her tactical analysis was ignored by supervisors who considered her too junior and physically unsuited for combat. Decision-making Nayeli's moment came when 3 insurgents emerged from carefully concealed positions near the ammunition storage facility at 02:30 hours, carrying explosive devices and automatic weapons toward the most vulnerable section of the perimeter. She was alone on foot, patrol in the adjacent sector, when she recognized the threat developing exactly as her behavioral analysis had predicted. Her response began with tactical positioning that used her small size as a strategic advantage. While larger soldiers would have been visible against the equipment and structures, she moved through shadows and blind spots with movements that seemed to anticipate the insurgents' tactical awareness. Her psychiatric training had taught her to read aggressive behavior and position herself to control confrontations before they escalated. The first insurgent never saw her coming. Using leverage techniques learned from restraining violent patients, she disabled him silently, using pressure points that rendered him unconscious without alerting his companions. Her mother had taught her that effective control meant neutralizing threats efficiently rather than engaging in prolonged struggles that attracted attention. Her second contact demonstrated the tactical thinking that had been dismissed as academic theory. She used the insurgent's own momentum against him when he turned to investigate his companion's disappearance, applying a chokehold that cut off blood flow to his brain in less than 15 seconds. The technique required precise anatomical knowledge and perfect timing rather than physical strength. The third insurgent presented the greatest challenge, as he had detected her presence and was attempting to detonate his explosive device manually. Nayeli's response showed the psychological insight that made her exceptional. She recognized his behavioral state indicated panic rather than tactical thinking, and she used his tunnel vision against him by approaching from an angle his stress-narrowed perception couldn't process, working with movements that seemed to flow around his desperate attempts to complete his mission. She neutralized the final threat using techniques that psychiatric training had taught her about managing individuals in extreme psychological states. Her understanding of stress responses and behavioral prediction allowed her to anticipate his actions and counter them with precision that larger, stronger soldiers couldn't have matched. When the quick reaction force arrived 3 minutes later, they found 3 unconscious insurgents secured with zip ties and their explosive devices safely separated from detonation mechanisms. The after-action reports documented threat neutralization that exceeded expectations for even the most experienced military police personnel. Back at the Tactical Operations Center, Nayeli's actions became the subject of intense analysis among security officers and behavioral specialists. Her integration of psychiatric patient management techniques with tactical operations had created new approaches to perimeter security that were immediately studied for broader application throughout the theater. Captain Morrison sought her out the following morning, his earlier dismissal replaced by genuine respect and professional curiosity about her methods. He admitted that he had never seen threat assessment and tactical response like hers, and requested that she be promoted to lead instructor for defensive tactics training. The same MPs who had questioned her physical capabilities now sought her expertise in reading behavioral indicators and tactical positioning. The broader impact extended throughout the military police community. Training officers began studying her techniques, recognizing that size and intimidation were less important than tactical awareness and psychological insight for preventing security breaches. Her approach to treating threats as behavioral problems that could be predicted and managed created new protocols that improved base security across multiple installations. 4 months later, Nayeli received the Army Commendation Medal for exceptional tactical performance under pressure. But the recognition she valued most came from Williams, who credited her threat assessment training with helping him prevent 2 subsequent infiltration attempts. and Brown, who incorporated her behavioral analysis methods into his own patrol procedures. The soldiers who had served with her never again equated physical size with tactical effectiveness. Naili's mother would have been proud to know that her lessons about understanding and managing dangerous behavior had prevented what could have been the most devastating attack on forward operating base Granite, proving that true strength came from intelligence and preparation rather than physical intimidation. "She's too small for real police work," Captain Morrison said, when 24-year-old Sergeant Nayeli Voss reported for duty at forward operating base Granite. What he didn't know was that those quick reflexes had been forged through years of restraining patients 3 times her size, and that tactical mind would soon neutralize 3 armed insurgents using nothing but situational awareness and perfect timing. Sergeant Nayeli Voss adjusted her body armor as she walked the perimeter of forward operating base Granite in Afghanistan's Kunar province, her 5'2" frame barely visible behind the standard issue equipment that seemed designed for much larger soldiers. At 24, she moved with the precise efficiency of someone accustomed to being underestimated based on physical appearance alone. The other military police soldiers barely acknowledged her during shift changes, most assuming she had been assigned to gate duty or administrative tasks rather than serious security operations. Her compact build and youthful appearance reinforced their assumptions about what an effective MP should look like in a combat zone, where physical intimidation often prevented confrontations, but Nayeli had specifically requested assignment to one of the most dangerous forward operating bases in Afghanistan, volunteering for foot patrols and perimeter security in an area with frequent insurgent infiltration attempts. Her personnel file showed exemplary performance in military police training, with top scores in defensive tactics and crowd control procedures, but what it didn't reveal was the specialized training that had shaped her approach to managing dangerous situations. The base maintained constant vigilance against infiltrators who regularly tested security measures, probing for weaknesses in personnel rotations and response protocols. Recent intelligence suggested insurgents were planning a coordinated assault on the ammunition storage area, making perimeter security critical to preventing catastrophic losses. If you want to hear more incredible stories of veterans who proved that size doesn't determine courage, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell, because we share these inspiring stories every week. Nayeli's extraordinary tactical skills weren't developed in military academies. They were forged during her childhood in Tucson, where her mother worked as a psychiatric nurse, specializing in patients with violent behavioral disorders. Dr. Carmen Voss had immigrated from Mexico as a young medical professional, building her career by excelling in the most challenging psychiatric environments where other nurses feared to work. While other teenagers avoided her mother's workplace, 16-year-old Nayeli spent summers volunteering in psychiatric facilities, learning techniques for managing patients who could become violent without warning. She discovered that effective control came from reading behavioral cues, positioning herself strategically, and using leverage rather than strength to neutralize threats. Her mother had taught her that small stature could be an advantage when dealing with aggressive individuals who underestimated her capabilities. They practiced de-escalation, scenarios where Nayeli learned to recognize pre-attack indicators and respond with precise defensive techniques that redirected aggression rather than meeting it with force. During her senior year of high school, Nayeli had prevented a potential mass shooting by recognizing behavioral warning signs in a disturbed classmate and coordinating with school security to intervene before violence erupted. The experience taught her that tactical awareness and perfect timing could prevent tragedies that physical intimidation couldn't stop. When she enlisted in the army to become a military police officer, Nayeli excelled in every defensive tactics course, earning top scores in threat assessment and tactical response procedures. But her instructors focused only on her technical competence, never understanding that she approached security operations with the psychological insight of someone who had spent years managing dangerous individuals in controlled environments. Her motivation was clear. Her mother had taught her that protecting people meant understanding how violence developed and stopping it before it escalated. Regardless of her physical limitations, The skepticism became obvious during security briefings when Captain Derek Morrison outlined perimeter protocols for defending against insurgent infiltration attempts. As the squad discussed patrol routes and response procedures, Nayeli quietly suggested they modify their timing patterns and observation posts based on recent intelligence about insurgent reconnaissance methods. Morrison's response was immediate and condescending. He told the team that Sergeant Voss was clearly unfamiliar with the physical demands of combat security and should focus on administrative duties rather than trying to redesign procedures developed by soldiers with actual combat experience. Several MPs chuckled, and Staff Sergeant Williams made a comment about needing real muscle for real threats. The dismissal intensified when Nayeli requested permission to review behavioral analysis reports about captured insurgents. She had identified patterns in infiltration attempts that suggested they could predict and prevent attacks by recognizing pre-operational surveillance behaviors. Morrison refused, explaining that psychological profiling was beyond her training, and that military police work required physical presence rather than academic theories. When Nayeli tried to explain her observations about insurgent movement patterns around the perimeter, Sergeant First Class Brown interrupted her. He pointed out that she looked like she belonged in an office rather than on patrol, and suggested she shouldn't waste time analyzing threats that required real soldiers to handle when they materialized. The final insult came when Nayeli volunteered for night patrol duty in the most dangerous sector. Williams openly laughed, asking how she planned to intimidate insurgents who were probably twice her size. Morrison told her to stick to daylight gate duty and leave the serious security work to MPs who could actually handle physical confrontations. The message was unmistakable. She was too small to be effective in real combat situations. That night, Nayeli sat in her quarters, reviewing intelligence reports and base security protocols with the same analytical attention her mother had taught her to apply to psychiatric patient assessments. The familiar process of reading behavioral indicators and predicting violence helped her focus past the day's humiliation. She studied satellite photographs of the base perimeter, identifying blind spots and approach routes that insurgents might use for infiltration attempts. The data revealed patterns in timing and positioning that suggested coordinated reconnaissance efforts, indicating a planned assault was likely within days rather than weeks. The rejection hurt more deeply than she had anticipated. She had hoped her training and analytical skills would demonstrate her value to the team, but she realized these soldiers saw only what they expected to see. A small woman who looked nothing like their idea of an effective military police officer. Their skepticism wasn't personal malice, it was ingrained assumptions about physical presence and intimidation being prerequisites for security work. Lying in her narrow bunk, Nayeli thought about every dangerous patient she had helped her mother manage in psychiatric facilities. She remembered the 250-pound patient who had attacked 3 male orderlies before she successfully de-escalated his violent episode using positioning and timing rather than force. She recalled the domestic violence suspect who had threatened to harm hostages until she recognized his behavioral triggers and talked him into surrendering peacefully. These memories didn't generate anger, but quiet confidence. She understood her capabilities better than anyone in her unit, and she knew that proving herself would require perfect execution when lives depended on her skills. Her mother had taught her that true strength came from understanding violence and preventing it, not from matching aggression with aggression. 2 days later, intelligence reports confirmed increased insurgent activity around forward operating base Granite, with surveillance indicating a coordinated assault planned for the ammunition storage facility. Nayeli was assigned to routine gate duty, while more experienced MPs handled perimeter patrols in the areas where attacks were most likely. During her shift, she noticed subtle behavioral indicators that others had missed. Local contractors were avoiding eye contact and seemed nervous about routine security procedures, and vehicle traffic patterns had changed in ways that suggested coordination rather than normal commercial activity. Her analysis of these behavioral cues indicated the attack would come within hours, not days. When she tried to share her assessment with Morrison, He dismissed her concerns as overreaction from someone who didn't understand the difference between suspicious behavior and normal civilian nervousness around military installations. He reminded her that threat assessment was not her responsibility, and she should focus on checking identification cards rather than playing intelligence analyst. Her concerns intensified when she observed 3 local workers whose behavioral patterns matched profiles of insurgents, conducting final reconnaissance before attacks. Their movement coordination, avoidance of security cameras, and interest in perimeter weaknesses were textbook pre-operational indicators, but her warnings were dismissed as paranoia from someone too inexperienced to distinguish real threats from normal activity.